Right down here. Click on this.
Okay.
Have you used the pointers before? Okay, he ran. Oh, okay, so Curtis was here.
Yeah, he ran me through it. We set it
Okay.
up. So all I need is the mouse in the corner,
Okay.
and I'll be okay.
Well, you could, if you'd like, you could put it up there, or I could do it for you.
No, I'll go on it.
Okay. All right.
So I know where I am.
Okay.
I'll get the talking and I won't know what I'm supposed to be doing. That's fine.
Okay.
Push it down. Oh, push it down. But,
I think they're on. I'll wait for them to come out. They're done. So I'll do that.
are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That you working hard today on many of our things we're trying to stay off. And this evening, if you get out the internet, you call it Wednesday, well, there's so many guys, the way you flat, which shifts is specific.
Chief?
Be in the store tomorrow.
Probably by 11 or noon. Don't
Okay.
they give a call or shoot me an email?
I'll give you a call.
Okay, what's going on?
I just want to come by and talk to you about the current news of property complaint and some follow-on issue.
What is that?
The one where the tires got drilled.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't make it there last
Last time, but I think you do your conversation with
Can you tell me if this is the yellow?
I don't know his address right off the top of my head, but I'll bring that information with me. And did you get a chance to see the video?
Brian called?
No. Did you send those out?
I thought we did.
I don't think I saw it.
It might have been a press release.
Okay. I'll take a look for it, but I don't remember seeing it. Yeah.
I'll get some donuts.
Is he getting help?
Sort of. We're working.
Is he home?
He just got home yesterday.
I had all new tires. This is my Christmas present.
Hopefully he'll be distracted by other things.
Or I'm gonna have to clean out my garage.
That's not. Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Sorry about that.
Good evening. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Human Services Committee. We have a quorum, and could we get an approval of the minutes of the August 6th? The approval of the minutes of, oh, wait a minute, I'm picking up the wrong one. I'm sorry, September 5th meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, if there is, I believe, one corrections on the minutes. Karen, could you make that?
The minutes should be revised to reflect that there's a new staff person for the committee, that I was in attendance instead of Evanston.
Okay. All right, mover of the motion, will you accept that correction or in addition to the minutes? The second? Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The agenda that you have did not have citizens' comments, so if there are citizens' comments other than the agenda items, if you wanted non-agenda items, we will take those now. If there's anyone that has a non-agenda item that they wanted to speak to, rather, we'll take that now. No? Okay.
I'm not on the list, but I do have a non-agenda.
Well, Miss Esther, you know the rules.
I'm sorry, I do. But since you mentioned it and it came to me right then, my name is Betty Esther. I stay at 2031 Church Street. This is not a non-agenda item, and it's not petty. Some people might think it is. But before we was coming to the meetings and stuff, we had the podium over there, and the people in the community could see who was talking. Now they see the back of our heads, which is kind of disrespectful to me, to the people in the audience at home. And that kind of deters some people from coming, because they will come, tell their friends, and they say, well, we didn't see you. They said, well, what did you have on? So then they have to go through a whole dissertation of explaining what they have on. So if we can move them back over the podium, back over there, so the community can be seen and heard, okay? Because when they come here to speak to you, they also are speaking to the people at home. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll pass that recommendation on, Ms. Esther. I think it's been made before by some other citizens as well, but I think there's a reason for the movement. Items for discussion. Our first item is the review of the police complaints. See any lights, Chief? Do you have a...
Good evening, Madam Chairman. We have one complaint this evening that we're going to discuss, and with your permission, I'd like to have Sergeant Hartsglass walk through a PowerPoint presentation which will help, I think, bring clarity to the rather expansive report that the committee has already received. Sergeant Hartsglass?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sergeant Hartsglass of the Office of Professional Standards. I conducted the investigation that you know of as CR 12-21. It involves a complaint enlisted by Mrs. Ava Greenwell and her son, Dewani Greenwell. I have the PowerPoint presentation, which I'll walk you guys through. on August 30th, 2012, there was a call received from 1618 Seward. The victim called and stated that she had just encountered a burglar in her home. The victim stated that the burglar appeared to be a teen, male black, wearing khaki cargo shorts and a dark T-shirt. This is an excerpt of that 911 call.
Evanston 911, where's your emergency?
1618 Seward Street.
Sure, what's going on?
Someone just came into my house. I was downstairs and I heard something that came up. Someone was in my bedroom. They were in the house.
Do you have a description of them at all?
He seemed like a young boy. He was African American. He had like a phone charger and like an iPad charger in his hand.
That are yours?
Yes, and he...
Did he take them with him?
No, he didn't. He dropped them. I don't know if he had anything else in his pockets.
Do you have a description of like what he was wearing?
I think he was wearing some kind of like cargo khaki kind of shorts and a dark brown T-shirt or a dark shirt.
Okay, and is 1618 Seward a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me get the officers headed into the area. This just happened, right?
Yeah, he just trying to...
Okay, hold on just 1 second. Let me get an officer on the way.
As you just heard, the dispatch operator on the 911 side took the call from the caller. The caller described the subject that she saw in her house, indicated that he was wearing khaki shorts, dark T-shirt, also indicated that he had a phone charger, but that he had dropped it. Now the 911 dispatcher will try to send that call out to officers who are in the area looking for that subject.
Sure, 272 cars in the area. Starting for 1618 Seward, 1618 on Seward. Just had a forced entry occur to a house. The offender's a black male, probably in his teens, wearing a dark shirt and khaki cargo shorts. 1618 Seward for 272 cars in the area.
282 going. 282, 281.
Now we have Officer Buell and his partner, who's the named accused officer in this investigation. They're already in the area because they're working burglary suppression. He and his partner, who are in the area, they see a subject who it fits the description, who is male black, who is wearing cargo khaki shorts, who is on a bicycle, and this is how the bicycle comes into the equation.
81. 281. We saw a guy from a distance kind of match that description on a bike. We lost him, like Dewey and Oakton, north of there. He didn't make it out to Oakton. 81-4. Looks like match that description at Dewey and Oakton, north of there.
Now, after Officer Buell's partner puts out that flash, now the officers have in their mind that they're looking for a subject. Not only is he male black, not only is he wearing cargo khaki shorts, but that he's also on a bicycle. Other officers in the area, they began to look for a subject matching that particular description. We have an officer already in the area, and at approximately 11:17 a.m., he stops a subject that's matching the description, that is wearing khaki cargo shorts, and that is on a bicycle. This is a video from an officer's vehicle showing that particular stop, which occurred at Florence and Oakton. Again, like, as I said, at approximately 11:17 a.m. The youth he stopped was cooperative in that when he told the youth to stop on a bicycle, the youth did stop. When he asked the youth to come over to his squad car, the youth came over to his squad car. He and the youth then had a conversation as to where the youth had been, where he was going, what he had been doing. The youth told him that he was an ETHS student. He told him that he was riding a bicycle in order to try to lose weight for the wrestling class that he wanted to enter. So they had a conversation. This youth was not handcuffed. A show-up presentation was done with this youth as well. at Florence and Oakton. This is witness officer number 4 who is at Oakton and Florence with the youth. And as I say, he's going to ask officers to come over, bring the victim over for a show-up, which is a visual observation done by either a witness or a victim of a crime to determine if the officers have actually apprehended the person that they described. Now, in the meantime, at approximately 11:18, we have another officer in the area driving southbound on Wesley. And this is the video excerpt in the top screen. This officer is the officer that Dewani spoke to me about in his interview. He said that as he was traveling home on Wesley, he couldn't really remember the exact name of the street, but it was Wesley. And this is Dewani wearing a gray T-shirt. He's wearing a baseball cap. He's wearing navy cargo shorts. He's traveling southbound. This is as he approaches Seward Street. And the officer sees him. At this time, Dewani does not make any evasive moves. He's just simply riding his bicycle home, as he said he was. He had just finished looking for some items he had lost the day before. And this officer, she wasn't certain whether or not she had enough information to stop Dewani. And as he enters the area of Oakton and Wesley, you can see the officer's vehicle right here in the top right-hand side of the screen at the bottom. And we have another officer approaching, going westbound on Oakton. Then we have Dewani at the crosswalk. He realized the officer has to stop, so now he has an opportunity to cross over into the Shute Park School. The officer who originally had seen him, she is still sitting there. Again, she doesn't think she has enough information. She sees him. She sees that he's matching the description as given by our victim. And as he entered the crosswalk and went over to the Shute School park area, this is the flash that she gives out to officers.
274.
274.
If we could just verify if somebody's with the victim, the description, because I got somebody with cargo shorts, like a dark navy blue or black.
Stop us, please.
All right, he's riding south through the park. He's on a blue bike. I'll try and catch up to him.
What park?
Sorry, the school. Shute School.
Okay, south on Florence. There's a guy on a bicycle. South on Florence through the park.
He's wearing a light gray tank top, blue cap. I can't catch up to him. I'm going to have to drive around.
What we just heard is witness officer 6 indicating that, yeah, I have a kid. He's going through the park of Shute School. He's matching the description. She's asking for affirmation. She's also asking someone to talk to the victim to verify the description as given by the victim to make sure that she's going to stop the correct person based on a description given by the victim. As she continues, she now exits her vehicle because she can't drive up on the curb and the sidewalk of the school area. When she's exiting her vehicle, we have officers asking her, well, which way are you going? What park are you in? Now she gives them more information. Now you can also hear her being slightly winded, having just tried to jog after Dewani Greenwell. She didn't try to tell Dewani Greenwell to stop. I'm sure if she had said, stop, Dewani, he would have stopped. But she never asked him to stop. All she did was get out of her vehicle and try to jog after him. That's why she's winded. However, the officers in the area, they don't realize why she's winded. They believe that she was chasing someone and that person wouldn't stop for her. Also, another element of this is that when the bicycle came into the equation, Officer Buell's partner brought that bicycle into equation. This young lady continued with that mindset. However, the young man that was stopped at Florence and Oakton, he was actually the person that Officer Buell's partner had seen at a far distance. However, Officer Bill's partner never communicated that to his coworkers. He never told anyone that, hey, the person I was looking for a couple of blocks away, he's that person that was stopped at Florence and Oakton by witness officer number 4. That communication is never made. Therefore, witness officer number 6, she continues with her effort of trying to make contact with Dewani Greenwell. With the assistance of Officer Buell and his partner, they are now going to the area to try to head off Dewani Greenwell, and they've gone to the area of Kirk Street. However, before getting to Kirk Street, they have already seen witness officer number 6 jogging back to her vehicle along with another officer, giving them the impression and the perception that this young man, whoever she had seen, is truly trying to evade her. However, that isn't the case. Dewani, he was riding his bike home. He even told me in his interview when he got to Florence, when he got to Oakton and Wesley, he could look west and he could see the officers having stopped what he believed 2 young men at Florence and Oakton. And he believed that something was going on in the area. I'm sure he didn't know what, but I'm sure Dewani wanted to get home, as any of us would have wanted to do when we see a lot of police presence in the area.
He's calling pretty hard. Southbound on Florence.
This is Officer Buell. As he's driving eastbound on Kirk Street, Dewani is riding his bicycle westbound on Kirk Street on the north side of the street where his home is located. Dewani is trying to get to his home. When Dewani gets to his home, he does get off his bicycle. By the time Officer Buell meets him in that area, Officer Buell believes he's heading through the yards, because that's what he said. He's heading through the yards. Indeed, we know now Dewani Greenwell was not heading through the yards. Dewani Greenwell was trying to get home. He was trying to go into his backyard. And as he reached to touch his wooden gate that has the latch on the inside of the yard, that's when Officer Buell became with the perception that he's trying to go over the gate and go through the yards. Now, another aspect that came up during this investigation as well, why would Officer Buell want to stop him when he says he's looking for someone that's 6 feet tall, high school age? This transmission was not by Officer Buell, it was by a detective, because remember, witness officer number 6, she asked for anyone to talk to the victim and verify the description of the suspect. Well, we have detectives who have now gone to the victim's home at 1618 Seward, and they are doing that. They're trying to talk with the victim and get a better description so the officers can be directed in the right path. However, when officers go and talk to victims or witnesses, they turn their radio down. Well, when this detective turned his radio back up, this is what you heard. A lot of scrambling at the beginning because he's cutting out his identity, he's cutting out who he is, he's cutting out anyone that's trying to transmit unknowing.
Black t-shirt, dark cargo shorts, no hat, skinny, tall, probably 6 feet, high school age.
So anyone that heard that at that particular time at 11:21, directly following Officer Buell's transmission, believes that it was Officer Buell making that transmission, but it wasn't. Even dispatch operator couldn't discern the difference.
Which are you guys on right now? We're at 1625 Kirk Street. Can we have the caller come over here too? Two 5-4. 10-4. We'll go to that one first. Where are they located? 1625 Kirk. Roger.
So then we have a detective indicating, yes, sure, we'll bring the victim over to 1625 Kirk instead of going to Oakton and Florence first. However, that's not what happened. He realized he was closer to Florence and Oakton, and the victim was taken to a show up at Florence and Oakton first. So we have Officer Buell at 11:21 requesting show up. Officer Buell, when he first got there, as I said, he observed Dewani Greenwell, in his words, abruptly throwing the bike down and heading toward a fence area. He asked him to stop. Dewani Greenwell immediately stopped. and he was handcuffed. At this time, Dewani's mother has exited their home to see what's going on because of the loud commotion. According to officers on scene, Dewani was cooperative. He was mild-mannered. He spoke, but he spoke softly. He cooperated with whatever the officers asked him to do. However, again, the officers, after seeing, especially Officer Buell and his partner, after seeing witness officer number 6 speedily return back to her vehicle, also hearing her over the radio sounding winded as if she had been in a foot chase, they were under the impression that this young man had been trying to evade her and that he was trying to run away. The officers believed that since he had already fled from her, they believed that he might try to flee from them. We know now that that's not part of Dewani Greenwell's nature. We know now that Dewani Greenwell, especially with his mother present, would have done anything that the officers asked him to do. However, when the officers were on scene at 1625 Kirk on August 30th at 11:21 a.m., they didn't know Mrs. Greenwell and they did not know Dewani. The officers didn't know what type of home it was. They didn't know who they were talking to. They remained on scene. We've had questions, why so many officers? Well, there were so many officers because we have the 2 female officers who had already tried to catch up with Dewani. We have an African-American officer that's off at the scene. We have Officer Buell and his partner, and we have a sergeant that's on scene. That's 7 officers. The female officers are speaking with Mrs. Greenwell. The African-American officer is speaking with Mrs. Greenwell. They're trying to explain to Mrs. Greenwell why Dewani has been stopped, why he has been handcuffed, and what's the next process to go through, that being a show-up. At the show-up, when the detectives, they first took the victim to Florence and Oakton.
254. 254. Left the residence, beginning mileage 60956, and that was a negative at Florence and Oakton, and our way to Kirk. 4724.
This is an in-car camera video of the scene. We have Officer Buell's vehicle that he was driving that day. It is a gray unmarked squad car. It is parked in Mr. and Mrs. Greenwell's driveway. We have our sergeant's vehicle right here, and we are viewing this from one of the female officers' in-car camera. This is following the show up. Dewani will soon be walking back toward his home because he's now since been released from handcuffs because the victim did not identify him as the burglary suspect. We have Officer Buell and his partner returning to his vehicle. We have Mrs. Greenwell right here. Mrs. Greenwell is now talking with Officer Buell and his partner, and I'm certain at that particular point, this is where Mrs. Greenwell's demanding an apology from Officer Buell and his partner. Officer Buell told Mrs. Greenwell that he wouldn't have a problem with apologizing to Dewani, but Dewani had retreated back into the home. Mrs. Greenwell told him, no problem, I will go get him because he deserves an apology. At that time, she went and she brought Dewani Greenwell back outside where the officers spoke with him, and at that particular time, they even told the sergeant on the car-to-car ban that they were going to stick around and offer the victim, offer Mrs. Greenwell an apology. When they offered the apology, though, Mrs. Greenwell nor Dewani thought it was heartfelt. They didn't believe it was sincere. Officer Buell said as he started apologizing, say, hey, I'm sorry, I only stopped you because you matched a description. That's all it was. It wasn't anything personal. Officer Buell stated in his interview that Mrs. Greenwell and Dewani immediately stated, no, you only stopped me because I'm black. This is racial profiling, nothing less than that. Officer Buell stated at that particular moment he didn't believe that anything that he would say would make a difference, nor would it matter. He then, therefore, ended contact with Mrs. Greenwell and Dewani, and he left the area. This is also an excerpt of the show-up results.
254. 254.
254.
All right, should be negative on Kirk. Our suspect last seen fleeing eastbound from in the north alley of Seward. After this on foot.
It's negative at both shows. Negative at both shows.
So again, from 11:13 to 11:26, this is where we are. The show up was a negative at 16:25 Kirk. The officers offered an apology. Mrs. Greenwell stated immediately after Dewani was released, then all the officers retreated. All the officers retreated because, again, we've had 13 minutes of trying to search for a burglary suspect. We tried to ascertain or take into custody a burglary suspect within a half an hour of occurrence so that we can be afforded the show-up process. However, this didn't happen, so officers immediately retreated to their vehicles because if Dewani wasn't the offender and if the young man at Florence and Oakton was the offender, that meant that the offender was still out there somewhere. So they retreated to their vehicles. Again, Officer Buell tried to convey an apology to Mrs. Greenwell and Dewani Greenwell, and after it was not affected, he left the area. Thank you.
Thank you. We have several people who've signed up to speak, so we're going to let them speak before we get into any discussion. First on the list is Carlos Sutton. You want to speak on this item?
Good evening, Carlos Sutton, and I have some very serious concerns that I want to bring to the Human Services Committee. The first concern I want is that this incident is not to be seen as isolated and a simple improper identification of a black male. Having been racially profiled myself, you never recover from these kinds of incidents. Luckily for me, this did not happen to me by two plainclothes policemen in Evanston, but it has happened to me as a black man, and I have never forgotten it. It was over 30 years ago, and it has always raised my suspicion about every time I see a blue or red light flashing in my mirror. My immediate concern is to have fear from that point on. Also, I want to thank the members of the committee for having this opportunity so citizens can not only tell you how this adversely affected people, but also how this incident could have been avoided. It would have been a simple matter to get simply better information. I've seen so many conflicts of interest from the report seeing here and the report that initially went out that would have automatically cleared this young man from the beginning. 6 feet tall, khaki pants or blue pants, black T-shirt is a gray T-shirt, hat. I mean, there's so many conflicting things here. Yes, I want criminals to be apprehended in Evanston. No one wants criminals walking the street to be incarcerated more than me. But you're dealing with a young man here that has personally affected me. The young lady that also spoke, Miss Newsom, these were children that I taught or had in Sunday school. They were polite, intelligent, from good families. These were not people, as you claim, gangbangers with their pants down around their ankles and girls running around. I'm very, very upset that this is the best that our community has to offer to the white community in Evanston, and you give them so much disrespect and you give them so much prejudgment that they are guilty until proven innocent. It bothers me very much, more than I could ever tell you. And the fact that this is still going on in 2012, 30 years later, is an insult to this community who claims they are the incidents, place where we have diversity and everybody is welcome in this community. This incident is not only isolated to Evanston. Juanita Jordan, with all her money, had to go to the Highland Park police office and remind them about racial profiling of her sons being stopped coming home on Techney Road. So this incident is not something that is isolated. It's something that you as a committee should emphasize more training for these police, better the representation or description of suspects. The only good thing I think that can come out of this is, number one, I've always taught my students about the double standard of living in Evanston. This is a good example of how you're treated in Evanston if you're black. And I'm sorry to say that the lessons that I was taught coming up in Evanston are still applicable today. This has also been a very good incident to people to get behind organizations like the Citizens Network for Protection. So citizens will have some place to go where they feel their complaints will be dealt with. I hope you would not push this under the rug. I hope that you would use this opportunity to train police better and use your power as a committee and elected representatives to make Evanston a safe place for all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Mrs. Greenwell?
Good evening. As you know, I'm Ava Greenwell. We're at this point because someone reported a burglary. Ironically, after all this time and talk, to my knowledge, the alleged burglar still has not been caught, if he ever existed. But what we have here is a chain of events that has exposed the city's dispatch reporting system as inadequate and lacking specificity. Had there been more questions asked by the dispatcher and more questions answered by police to me, and better communication clearly from this presentation from Sergeant Hartz-Glass, we probably wouldn't be here today. However, the report that was posted online deflects blame and instead tries to portray my son as sinister, suspicious, guilty of something, and up to no good. And I think you heard just a few minutes ago, he was just riding his bike home. It seems like it was a part of a plan to discredit him and me, and I do not agree with that report. My son did nothing wrong, and neither did I. We did not ask for this. Your department created this problem. And I will not sit back and let you tarnish my name or my son. Clearly, the chief and others in the department did not like it when I raised the issue of racial profiling, but it is being talked about throughout this city. A 7th grader, earlier this year, wrote a Bill of Rights essay, which won first place. And I quote from his essay, "I have to start by saying that I am an African-American male and that most of us end up in the prison system of the United States of America because of the violation of the 4th Amendment to the Constitution. I hear many people in my community talk about prison being the new Jim Crow. I hear that term so much and think that that's adult stuff. Now that I have to think about the 4th Amendment, it now becomes 7th grade stuff. I have walked down the streets of Evanston, yes, Evanston, Illinois, and have seen my friends, a lot of black teenagers and immigrants that are of African descent, being searched by the police. And the only probable cause the police have to search them is that they have the power to do so. I have watched this, and the police don't find anything wrong with them and let them go. But I know they feel violated and humiliated. According to the law, you have to ask a person before you can search them. The police have guns and most of the time never ask if they can search teenagers, and if the teenager tells them no, the result usually ends in violence. That's how you end up with the story on the evening news that states, young teenagers shot by police. The story is spun to look like the teenager pulled a gun out on the police. The only people who believe the stories are the people who feel the need to believe that our system of justice is working. I guess it is working for them, but not for a lot of people. So this is how some of your 7th graders in Evanston feel about being profiled on a regular basis. When I spoke to you back in September, Alderman Braithwaite initiated and asked that some number crunching be done, that some analysis be looked at. I certainly hope that you are doing that analysis, because I certainly will continue talking about and writing about this issue until justice is served.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenwell. Ms. Decree, you want to speak on H1?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Madeline Ducree. I just want to acknowledge a few facts that must be acknowledged. We know the war on drugs is one of the leading cause of many colored men being forced into the system of no return. Entrapment occurs more often in the poor area than in the Caucasian community. The police are allowed to rely on race as a factor to stop and search people of color, colored people more so. Even though we know colored folks aren't the only people who break the laws dealing with drugs and other crimes, they are stopped and searched more often. Police officers will load up, and to make it sound differently, they will add on charges to charges. I know this for a fact. Even a bicycle can be attached to a charge when it is needed to be used. We need to change the laws so that they can be fair to all. We need to change the training in the academy that the police get their training. Some police officers must learn to respect and behave professionally when they come in contact with the people they serve. To add on to the situation what happened to the young man of the Greenwells, I know for a fact that children, teenagers, men too, are being dealt with differently. We need to teach the police how to police in the black community and other communities of the poor. I just want to mention also, before I leave here, I came here October 8, 2012 to speak about an officer who disrespected me. And I want to say again, I will never forget that. Detective George is not the only officer who is disrespecting people out in this community, okay? But he is the only one who disrespected me. And I will not tolerate that out of anyone. Grandchildren, President of the United States, anyone, you will hear from me. It is not a threat, it is a fact. And we as people must stand up and acknowledge these things that happen in our community. And we must get in touch with some legislators for it to be changed. Now, I do know for a fact that poor people may fight in the street, but people with education and degrees, they fight with legislation. I know this. And I didn't have to read Michelle Alexander book, The Jim Crow, to know that. Thank you. We will be watching, and I will be back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cree. That's the last person we have on the sign-up sheet that wanted to speak on H1. Chief, did you want to make comments before we get into a discussion?
A couple of quick comments, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Commander Hartley and Sergeant Hartsglass for professional investigation into this matter. They were thorough and complete, and I think you can see that from the work that was submitted to you. I realize that not everyone will concur with the findings or agree with them, but they did their jobs and did it well and did it in an equitable fashion. Also, before we get too far into the discussion of this, I need to refresh everyone's memory that there's pending litigation on this matter, and I think we have extended ourselves as much as we can on being as transparent as we can and providing all the information to the Greenwells before this evening, and also on the city website for anyone else to take a look at. Part of this situation is not only complicated by the ongoing litigation, but also some of the allegations that first came to light in that litigation. There's a component of this regarding Facebook that investigation is not completed as of yet. Commander Hartley is leading that investigation, and that is ongoing as we speak. Officer Buell, whose name has been mentioned this evening, and several officers have been and interviewed on that, and several more will be interviewed regarding the components of the Facebook issues that were brought to our attention via the federal lawsuit. In reaction to this event, some of the steps that will be undertaken, regardless of the outcome of this matter, is we have begun negotiations with Professor Aaron Thompson of Eastern Kentucky University to bring additional training to the department. One of the conversations I've had with Professor Thompson over time is that he will come and do the initial training, evaluate the department, and decide whether or not he will continue to come back annually or every 18 months to do another facet of training, or whether he will recommend one of his colleagues to do that. Those are conversations that the professor and I have not concluded yet, but my point in bringing this forward is I don't think the issues here can be addressed by a single block of training. It's an ongoing exercise that we will be devoting a portion of our training budget to. Also, one of the things that will occur from this event is an increased use of our digital recording system. Recently in Illinois, the state statutes have changed regarding the use of those digital and sound recordings. When that started out, they were confined to Illinois Vehicle Code violations. With that change in law, they can be utilized in all enforcement stops. I think that will be critical in the future as we get past he said, she said to let's look at the recording and see what happened. And frankly, that is a huge boon to not only the OPS investigators and myself in making decisions about that, because it does convey other things other than exactly what was said. Voice, tone, and demeanor, body language all play hugely into communications, and frankly, that's not often discernible in the written word or a recounting of the comments made later. Those conclude my prepared remarks for this evening, and once again, I'm available to answer questions. Mr. Ford is here to give me the take sign should we wander into areas he thinks are inappropriate for a public discussion with pending legislation.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sergeant Hart's class, Commander Hartley, for what appears to be a very thorough report. The thorough investigation, I'm assuming that you had full cooperation of all the witnesses connected to this complaint, and that there's been no stone unturned in flushing out what happened. I really appreciate the presentation, which, when combined with a map, I was really able to understand the chronology of events and what transpired in those 13 minutes. Is it 13 minutes, I think? My question has to do, one question, there's been some concern about what happens when a 911 call comes in and there's victims given a description of an offender, and my question is then about what assumptions our officers on the streets make about the reliability of a victim's description of an offender. How reliable is that description? How much can you go on? And how much of a guide is it?
It is, if I may, Alderman, it is the best guide we have at the time. And frankly, there's, in police parlance, good victims and bad victims. There are people who have been through horrifically traumatic events that will describe individuals down to a T. There are other people that have been in fender-bender traffic accidents that they can't be possibly at the same accident, judging from the damage on the car. So this is a very individual thing. You kind of take what you can get. And once again, that's the best information we have at the time. If you recall in Sergeant Hartsglass' presentation, one of the first things that's happened is there are detectives dispatched to the victim to further flesh out that description, to further talk to them about what they saw. Are they sure about this? Is there anything else? And so we begin to work with that victim of a crime to determine if we can ferret out any additional information. And once again, sometimes you have excellent witnesses and sometimes they're iffy. And the officers on the street don't know that. The information comes over the radio. They react to what they're being told.
And sometimes the timeliness of additional information helps an ongoing, immediate, urgent investigation. Sometimes it doesn't.
No, more information always helps.
Sure.
But we want to, if once again, even in this particular case, the detention of Mr. Greenwell that led to our discussion this evening, we obviously not the person we're looking for. We want to get that done and go on to the next thing. So if additional information comes out that clears young Mr. Greenwell sooner, we want to know it and go on to the next thing, because we want that ongoing stream of information. That's how we're most effective. And as Mrs. Greenwell pointed out, no, the offender has not been caught. We're best at this immediately. As time goes by, it becomes much more difficult.
I've got to say, I think we were glad we were doing burglary suppression in the neighborhood at the time.
We're in that point of the year where most of the neighborhood enforcement teams will be rotated into burglary suppression. The TAC unit is already doing that. And so to take just a short time out, that issue will become more problematic between now and New Year's Day, and we need to be aware of that and conduct ourselves accordingly.
I don't see any other lights. Mrs. Greenwell, may I ask you one question? You referred to a report being posted. Could you tell me which report you're speaking of? Are you speaking of the? Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that's what you were referring to. Okay, thank you. Any other lights?
Madam Chair, do we need to accept the report?
We'll need to accept the report, yes. And
from our Citizen Police Advisory Committee, the Evanston Police Advisory Committee, and Internal Operations report?
Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. The report was reviewed by all of the citizens groups, committees, and then brought to us after all of that. After that, as a part of the full investigation, and then brought to us. Now it's the pleasure of this committee in terms of what we want to do with it. So I'm asking for some direction.
I think we would look to accept the report from with regard to this particular police complaint.
Second.
The item includes a number of other things beyond just the Greenwell's complaint. But I move that we accept complaint review CR 1221.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Are there any other comments? No? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Madam Chairman, my responsibility is to return to the committee at its next date and advise you as to the progress of the training with Professor Thompson, and I will make sure that that occurs. If not myself, Commander Hartley will be here to give you an update on that.
Fine. That is, I'm really pleased to see that recommendation in the report. I also want to just simply say that I had a chance to review the video presentation earlier and had a chance to ask some questions. And I think that one of the things that once you hear it and you begin to see other pieces of it, it certainly makes us wonder in terms of how we listen to each other and can we really hear each other in terms of what's being said. So, or the assumptions that we make. I think that Sergeant Harglass, the point that she makes about the gate, which was just absolutely amazing to me, in thinking that the gate has a lock that's on the inside, and you would think that if you're reaching up there, you might be trying to go over the fence rather than just trying to unlock the gate. So there were just so many little pieces that were very helpful in terms of looking at the investigation. Very helpful to me anyway. Is that you, Alderman Brathwaite?
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. To the Chief and the staff, thank you very much for the detailed report with this. And just given that there's an open case, I'll hold my questions regarding the specifics to a later date. I do want to make it clear that I hear, and we all hear, the concerns from the community. And I think after this case has been resolved, there is still that unanswered question in terms of the negative perception that many black residents have in terms of how they're treated by the Evanston Police Department. And I think that that's been the elephant in the room for a number of years. And as one of the residents indicated, it sort of takes something like this to bring us to the point where we have to have the conversation. So I'm very curious to hear, maybe at a later time, a little bit more about your decision to use this particular instructor or professor outside of Kentucky. I know we have a lot of local resources here in town and in the city of Chicago. There must be a reason why you chose this person in Kentucky. So I would like to hear a little bit more about that. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the components, and I don't want us to ignore the reality that it is happening. And so it would be interesting to hear more nationally what type of discipline is out there. So there's the training part that we understand there's a need for ongoing assessment. But I'm curious to know that if there's a consequence, what is it when we're able to identify those people who feel truly that they have been harassed? I think what's disturbing to me that I identify the most with as a black male, also as a parent, is regardless of whether it's proven or it's justified, there's still that impact that black males have in this community. And I think that's something that we really need to identify. So I don't want to get it again. I want to avoid the specifics of this case, but it is something that I've heard a number of times, and I think it's something that we really have to address from a disciplinary standpoint. So I'd like to have that conversation at some point, Chief.
Absolutely, Alderman.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Did we take the vote all the way through? Yeah. So then we move on to H2, which is the township's annual financial report. Oh, I'm sorry, HH1. I'm sorry, Assessor Bonnie Wilson. It's a report. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Bonnie Wilson, Evanston Township Assessor, and I'm just here to give you just an update on the work that our office has done in the last few months. Since our last Human Services meeting in August, the Evanston Township Assessor's Office helped to facilitate property tax bill corrections for 28 taxpayers. September and October's total amount returned to local residents was $33,183,000, and this brings the total amount returned for missed property tax exemptions to $331,638 for the first 7 months of the fiscal year, and I think that's commendable for my office to return money to our local residents that they might not have gotten if it wasn't for our office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, can we have a motion to accept the township's bills for October 2012?
Move to accept the township bills for, which number? October 12th, October 2012.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now the H2, Township Annual Financial Report. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the question.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Ms. Jean-Paul.
Hello.
My question had to do with the auditor's statement from Baker Tilly, and I'm looking at page 169 of our packet, that the auditor did identify some significant deficiencies in procedures, control processes, and I'm wondering, do we have any room within our staffing to make those adjustments to address the concerns of the auditor? One was for a control in place that requires review and approval of new vendors, a more formal purchasing process, and then something having to do with the processing of accounts payable as distinct from the task of ordering goods.
Okay, well, to answer, as you know, that is one of the notations that we always get on our audit, and that has to do with the size of our staff.
Right.
We're 5 people, and you're always going to have someone doubling up to do something. The list for vendors, we're going to incorporate a new process. The new vendors have to be approved by the township supervisor or the executive director. And then that list will be compared on a monthly basis, showing that there's no new added ones added to the current list.
Okay.
So when the bills are being paid, we'll be able to see those vendors that we have, compare it, identify it, and take matters into.
So these were your concerns too, and I know that the staff is kind of lean, and it's just a matter of finding a way within your staffing to make those adjustments. And,
right.
But it looks like you're heading that way.
Yeah, we have people that's going to be doubling up on the same thing, so it's hard to have one person do it without adding to the staff. But if you have any financial questions about our audit, we do have Jason Cole here, who's the audit, to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. No questions?
Okay.
Okay. It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? H3, 111-0-12 ordinance establishing the Americans with Disabilities Act Advisory Board.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there anyone to speak to that, or anybody have any questions? Director Gaynor.
Chairperson Holmes, members of the committee, I'll be happy to answer any questions. As you know, over the last few years, as we've downsized in the city, some of the staff who have addressed this issue of ADA compliance, both in program as well as in facilities, have no longer been funded in the budget. We did some modifications in our department, and we've assigned some of these responsibilities to existing personnel, and I think that's in our report. One of the issues we did come up with was a recommendation to seek assistance from the folks in the community, and that's the recommendation, is to create this advisory board to help us with both program recommendations that would help our folks with special needs, as well as infrastructure issues outside of what our building department would require as it relates to code.
Any questions? Okay, it's been moved and second.
This is a board that we've already agreed to create, and this is just creating it?
Right.
Yes, this is the resolution and the ordinance that would create it. Correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaynor. H4, 117-0-12, ordinance amending the Evanston City Code to make certain changes to the City of Evanston Public Libraries Board authority.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. HH5, 77-R-12, resolution expressing the City of Evanston's desire to keep Asian carp out of the Great Lakes.
Move approval with a question.
I'm sorry you're going to do that. It's been moved in second. Alderman Grover.
What's the origin of this resolution, this proposed resolution?
I have.
How did it find its way to? There's no memorandum preceding it. I like it. I'm fine with it.
I know every once in a while I see an article in the paper about them thinking that they've gotten to the lake and then they figure out a way to put those electric things on them, and I don't know, they're maybe near the river down farther. I have no idea. So I have no idea how it got to us.
Well, I'm wondering if
it came from legal.
If we could send it up to City Council with a recommendation and perhaps with a filler memorandum to explain where it comes from and why.
Okay, we can do that.
It'll have a history in it anyway. It'll have a history
Yes.
in it anyway.
Yeah.
But it, usually there's some kind of reference or something.
Especially when it's fish.
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything for us?
Seems fishy to us.
Thank you, Alderman Grover. That's a good one. Okay. Okay, so we moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
And then communications, basketball hoops at Ridgeville Park District. Director Gaynor, do you want to speak to that? Because
Well, I tried to explain it in a very brief
I saw your memo.
This issue was raised, I believe, by you, Alderman Holmes. Previously, I had a discussion with the director of the Ridgeville Park District. My understanding is that over the last 12 to 18 months, there's been a number of concerns by residents of folks playing late and unacceptable activity occurring in the later hours on the courts. The Park District decided to remove the hoops. There's been discussion, and as I understand it from the director, that they are going to reconsider reinstalling the hoops, where they would put them, take them down in the evening and put them back up in the morning, and so that they can play until a certain time. Until there's a certain time, maybe 8 o'clock or however they make that decision, and then take them down and put them back up in the morning.
Right.
That's under excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's under consideration, I believe he said, after the first of the year.
Okay, thank you. If I remember correctly, I believe some citizens came to the Human Services Committee to complain about the hoops being down, and we mentioned that those were not our parks, and they also mentioned the school district. So, and I think we asked if we could certainly help, and then I believe Alderman Breathwaite's gone, but I believe he had some concerns about that as well. But I certainly got we got your memo, and it would be really nice if that could happen, so that it would be available to the youth that live in the area to be able to do that.
We'll follow up on that for you.
Fine, thank you. Okay, that concludes the items on our agenda, unless anyone has anything else. If not, can we get a motion to adjourn? It's been moved in second. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.